Hello and welcome to the Hotel News Now podcast. I am editorial director Stephanie Ricca. We have a great episode for you today. My guest is John Schultzel, Chief Growth Officer of Portland, Maine's Olympia Hospitality. If you are not familiar with Olympia, it's a combined development and management company with a combination of independent boutique hotels and resorts, many on college campuses, a good handful of franchise hotels, quite a few restaurants, bars, and other cool amenity concepts. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. We have a little bit of everything. Good to see you.
Did I describe your company the right way?
Beautifully.
Oh, see, well, then my job here is done. Let's start by talking about something fun. We are going to talk a lot today about independent hotels, since that's a big part of your portfolio. So I want to first draw our listeners in with a little visual story. Are you with me?
I am ready.
Okay, so last year, your company opened a new hotel in Olympia's collection of university hotels called Hotel Ursa at the University of Maine. Now, I read about this hotel online. I always love reading those stories behind an independent boutique hotel and kind of seeing where you connect the dots and put them in their place. So would you begin by telling our listeners more about the concept of this hotel? There's stars, there's bears, there's a coffee shop. I feel like it's a great example of that unique ability operators of indie hotels have to tell us a story.
And you had a pun and you didn't even know it when you said connect the dots. And I'm going to get to that in a minute because there is a constellation reference in all of the branding for the project, which is super cool. For the record, I got to work on this one myself, and it's one of my favorite projects for so many reasons. One, it's in our home state. Two, there are buildings on the University of Maine campus that feature our founder's name because he is a benefactor of the University of Maine system. So we wanted to be there. Three, there were two dilapidated old educational buildings on the campus that were revitalized by virtue of a P3 partnership, public-private partnership, that brought buildings that were serving no purpose to life into a hotel. And when you get to work with buildings like that, they're really fun hotel buildings. There's a lot of creativity, different room types, cool architecture. You know, when we went into the buildings initially, the old beakers from the chemistry lab were still in the building.
Neat.
Super neat. So then we got into the branding exercise. And you can imagine with universities, there's always a lot of different fodder for that.
Sure.
But this one, it's the University of Maine Black Bears. We're in northern Maine. And so one of the features of the school is a planetarium that they have on campus. And so having explored lots of different avenues, we really kind of leaned into this sort of celestial format for the branding, which was Hotel Ursa, which is Latin for bear. But in the Maine northern sky, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, which are the big and little dippers, are a constant in sort of New England lore.
Right.
And so we're like, oh, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, academic space, majors and minors. And it just took a life of its own. And you can imagine, we actually had to name, there was a third building there that's new construction, and we named it Polaris Hall because the North Star, I think, is the cornerstone of Ursa Major. So there was just so much to do. And when you execute in boutique independent hotels, you're always looking for storylines and themes that you can be playful and creative with. And being on the Black Bear campus with a sort of Latin connection to the stars, it all came together. It's super cool.
Oh, I love it. And the coffee shop is called Majors and Minors,
it's
right?
It's called Major Minor.
Major Minor.
We tried to call it something else, but we just couldn't come up with a better name. It sounds a little kitschy, but the reality is it's perfect for that spot.
I love stories like that because they do underscore that idea of authenticity and travel and experience. And you can see when hotels or any brand tries to go for that and they reach a little too close to the sun, don't quite make it. But when it is a story that truly does connect your hotel to the place, then it really just sings.
I think we all, in boutique independent hotels in particular, we all want a story tell. I think if you get to pick how you execute in hospitality, that's where the fun is. And so fortunately that canvas allowed us to paint a great picture because there was so much to use. The school was super supportive. And I think the messaging is really, really well received because we can do so much with it.
Right. People can see the authenticity in it, right?
Absolutely.
Now, your Chief Growth Officer is your title. So tell me Olympia's formula for growing its portfolio, because as we mentioned, Your portfolio is diverse. 25 really unique indie hotels, 12 franchised hotels, good number of Hyatt and Hiltons, restaurant, golf, spa. What does growth mean for you?
Well, as a small company founded in Portland, Maine, I think years ago we had an aspiration to grow into a national company with a national footprint and to be recognized as a national leader in hospitality, which seemed a little bit ambitious at the time, given the fact that our recipe for growth is actually rather gradual. We are not wholesale portfolio people. We are not mergers and acquisitions and scalable hospitality. We're one project at a time, and we let the success of that project build momentum to the next project. And that's worked very well for us. And sort of two examples come to mind, one being our campus work. The community in colleges and universities is actually surprisingly small. And there's a number of really large campuses that have dozens of hotels that support them. But in the small college space, everybody knows each other, and great execution gets shared with other members of the community, and that leads to other opportunities for us. So our growth is founded on referrals and reputation, and people having a good experience collaborating with our company and telling a peer who has the same problem about us. And then the more we do that, it's sort of like the old shampoo commercial, and so on, and so on, and so on. And that's how it's been for us. So we're up to 42. I hope we'll be up to 50 by the end of this sort of calendar decade or so.
Did I get the numbers wrong?
I don't.
42, 20, okay.
Well, I'm including some stuff that's coming online this month. So,
okay.
So we've had a few recent additions. And,
all right.
So we have another little collection of 4 that come on at the end of this month.
Oh, good.
And we have a couple other things.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. How long have you been in college towns?
Well, I'd like to say we've been there forever because even back in the 70s when we were a Holiday Inn franchising company, we were at the University of Virginia. And I think if those people who were in hotels for a really, really long time recognized really early on that campuses, especially large land-grant universities, are great settings. You've got big schools, events, sports, college visitation. That extends into the medical center where there's a whole another cache
there's
of demand.
Research departments.
Yeah, and it goes on and on. So I don't think that's a great big secret. But we've been intentionally focused on campus hospitality starting right around the recession. When we were coming out of the recession, really trying to lean into third-party hospitality work, we were lucky enough to find ourselves in partnership with Rollins College and Swarthmore College, who had aspirations of bringing hospitality amenities to their campuses there. And those were some of the first big wins that we had in third-party work. And I think with that came a discovery that we really like doing it. College and universities, there's so much thought leadership. There's so much engagement from the faculty and staff on what they want there. They care for their assets and for the guest experience at an uber high level. And that makes the work fun. You have a really creative, compelling partner who wants to do the right thing for the long term. And so for us, that's great work to do. And they're also expressive. I hold the Graduate brand in very high regard, but it's their brand first. And a lot of our format is based on the school's brand first and trying to bring that to the community.
Sure.
Through everything from naming to, visual identity and then, voice and execution.
Like we talked about with the Ursa.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really about their brand more than it is about our brand.
So you mentioned a little bit about the company getting into third-party management. It's a good time to talk about, share how Olympia is integrated, in terms of hotels that the larger company owns, how that overlaps with hotels that you manage.
That's a great question. I think treating all the hotels in your group as if you own them imparts a certain mentality on decision-making and execution that a lot of other owners appreciate. So we started off as an owner-operator. When I joined Olympia in 2001, we owned every asset that we had. There were only 9 of them. Fast forward to 2025, about 1/3 of our portfolio is owned and operated, and the rest is third-party, around 2/3. But we treat every asset with an owner's mentality. And I think, we're not necessarily managing the hotel in a vacuum. We want the owner to tell us what their goals are. In some cases, the colleges are a little bit different, right? They're not as financially motivated.
Sure.
They're more experientially motivated. We have other hotels who realize that long term, we want to preserve the reputation and the quality of the hotel so that we may not be as profit driven in the immediate term. We want to spend money on R&M. We want to reinvest capital every year into things that the guest is touching. And in some cases, it is a profit motivation. And our ability to sort of pivot to each one of those scenarios.
Very case by case.
And put an operating plan that works for that scenario is, I think, at the heart of what we do, which makes us a little less formulaic, which then it sort of explains why there's so much diversity in our group.
Right. And with so many independent hotels, of course, that's a necessity. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Indies are having a moment, all this experiential travel that we talked about. Many of yours are in what would seem to me as high barrier to entry markets. Like you've got practically the entire island of Nantucket, right?
Yeah.
Prestigious college towns like Cambridge, so on. Rollins College is not a little local community college.
Right.
What is the toughest part about getting small indie hotel deals across the finish line?
Really, I think they're small. And so there's always a tug of war between cost, borrowing, and NOI, profitability, et cetera. And the smaller the hotel is, the more sensitivity is to those variables. So we're fortunate with some of our campus partnerships that the return is less important because they're funded a little bit differently than privately owned hotels. But in seasonal markets, especially in New England and an island landscape or a ski mountain, you really are. You make 80% of your NOI in 20% of the year, the 80-20 rule. So you're really planning in the off season for success in the season, and that requires a slightly different outlook. I think the hard part when there is realizing that the decisions you're making, for instance, in March, are really impacting July, and you have to be ready to execute. And if things are off a little bit, you have to react and respond very quickly.
Sure.
Because if you miss that window, you don't get it back.
You don't get it again for another 12 months, right?
And then some of those spaces, it's also making sure that you are. The weekends seem to take care of themselves in boutique settings because that's more of a leisure experience. But really trying to compete with your franchise competitors, sounds a little redundant, to earn experientially sensitive travelers midweek is another challenge because you have to lure them away from their loyalty program,
right,
or their sort of their habits, their travel habits, to have them explore something different. But we tend to make long-term fans out of those folks because, Swarthmore is a great example. If you're staying in the Philly area or in that whole region, there's not a lot of great, cool options. But when you go to the Inn at Swarthmore, you're like, oh my God, I should stay here every time. The restaurant's fantastic. The room's great. It's like adjacent to an arboretum. And that's a hard experience to replicate if you're staying at a Hampton Inn or a Courtyard.
Sure. So. And that, again, that experiential travel, when it is in an independent hotel, you have to be even more dialed into those travel trends.
You certainly do.
So, and you have, obviously on a college campus, there is a lot of demand that is coming through those channels like we talked about, but you've got a lot outside of college campuses as well. You've got restaurants, bars, amenities in that independent portfolio.
Right.
So that means, John, I'm going to count on you to have some inside scoop on what is hot trends-wise now among leisure travelers.
That is a great question, and the answers are very dynamic. I think especially in boutique independent hospitality, food and beverage is always going to be at the forefront of how you are leveraging your building to create and enhance the experience. And either works down there or up there in the rooftop setting, or it doesn't. And so being tuned to that, one great example of that right now are beverage trends.
Okay.
Right. So rooftop bars are still insanely popular, but traditional spirits consumption is changing and evolving because there's a trend that's gradually a little bit away from alcohol, without alternative beverages, but the vibe and the energy and the experience are still highly desirable. So pivoting our cocktail menus to be a little bit more inclusive for all types of consumer is a great example of how recent trends are affecting daily execution.
All right.
Menus are always going to be an issue as well, whether or not we're big plate formats or shareables.
Yeah, what's the trend there? I feel like that goes up and down.
It's still kind of the shareables thing, to be honest with you, because people don't want to eat just the plate that they're served.
Oh, see, maybe that means that I'm not a young hip traveler. I want my own food.
Well, you can sort of I want to taste that. I want to taste that. I want to taste that. Let's order 5 things.
So then it means I order more, so that I see what you're doing.
But I think people just want to sample more.
Right. Experience.
Yeah, there's choice.
Okay. How about in terms of trends, high and low kind of things? You mentioned cocktail and rooftop, and we hear about spa and golf. There's a lot going on. That's expensive stuff. People are doing it. They're still doing it.
They're still doing it.
I think you're right.
There definitely is a difference in terms of the level of execution. The luxury segment is unfazed by the volatility that we're experiencing on a daily basis. And so I think there's always room for those experiences to be add-ons to the travel. I think when we move a little bit down to upscale and maybe even tier below, I think there's a little bit more selective decision making that's going on there. Instead of enjoying the whole menu of services, you might pick 1 or 2 and then move on to the rest of your journey. And so I do think there's going to be some of that where we see a little bit less participation or more selective participation in resort offerings, as an example. Mm-hmm. And then, leading back in even to the COVID experiences where there are a lot of things you can do, like park visitation and hiking, that you can do without having to pay for it. Sure. And so making sure that when you those folks tend to treat hotel like home base. And so getting back to home base needs to be the right experience for those folks so that you can rest, recover, and unwind, and then go back at the adventure the next day.
Which, if you were commoditizing that across a bunch of hotels, you wouldn't necessarily know in a given market what those particular needs are.
That's a great point.
One of the common threads, though, across all hotel operation now is, of course, labor, availability, cost. We've heard, in recent days, reminders that has never gone away, right? And COVID took so many people out of the industry. So not only are you getting them back, but you may be getting them back in different ways who aren't as familiar with hospitality and service. What best practices can you share about operating high experience hotels at a time when labor is still very much an issue?
What a great question. I think hospitality professionals have always needed to win employees to their settings. And as a result, we've always had to place a premium on training. But the age-old adage about hiring for hospitality has never gone away, and it's alive today as much as it ever has been. So I think there's, certainly within our franchise partnerships where there's a ton of training material, or our independent hotels where we have to create and develop that material on our own. We can do that with anybody, but what we can't replace is the spirit to serve. Right. The eye contact that somebody naturally makes, or simply the sort of the warmth in tone of voice and behavior. I think we all had to make decisions where we settled on staff members just to fill roles. We had to do that in 2020, 2021, and 22. And now we're back, I think, to a place where we can be a little bit more selective, especially as wages have risen. So if we can find the people who just have the spirit to serve, and we can invest and engage in training, that's a proposition we can all live with. Right. And admittedly, I think that's been the case in hospitality for as long as we can all remember.
Sure. And it's been interesting to see companies a little bit more able to pivot since they dealt with the giant blow of the pandemic. Now,
it feels like a luxury.
It feels, It feels like, hey, you're able to roll with this particular punch.
And I think the promise of hospitality, a lot of people have said this over the last several years, is that our industry has done an awful job marketing our positions to the workplace as a whole. Nobody wants to join hospitality at the entry level. And I hope that will change with wages. But one thing that we've always been able to tell are stories of people entering our industry at the ground floor and rising to the penthouse. We have a lot of examples of that within our own group. People who started off as night auditors are now, leading roles in our home office, or multi-property supervisors. So, I don't think that really has changed, but I do think we have to constantly reinvest in training. Part of that is how you train. In the old days, you used to sort of have a paper training book, and it was a lot of shift, shadowing your supervisor and so on and so forth. And that's all been digitized now. And we have learning management tools that, people can basically learn all the background material that they need to know from a phone app, which is a lot different than it used to be, because they need to know those things. You need to know about harassment, and you need to know about work safety, but you really can't train on verbiage and guest interactions unless you're doing it next to somebody and seeing what they did. And the only way to learn how to take great care of a guest room is to go in and do it. Yep. And then have somebody inspect it and tell you what you did right and what you did wrong.
Just like you're building a hotel for the guests and seeing what that, fitting what they are asking for. I imagine finding those right employees locally and where you are is similar acquisition process.
And we have to invest in it as well. One of the things I have seen in a lot of recently delivered hotels that friends of ours have done is an intentional investment in the back of house spaces to make the employee experience better. So your break room is not some little storage room that converted into a break room, but it's a break room that's meant for people to feel comfortable and know that they're welcome there.
Right.
So I do think the employee experience needs to be fully appreciated from the moment there's a punch in to the moment they leave. Right. Work rules will always be work rules, and the work will always be the work.
But the care element.
The care. That's a great way.
Sure. It's for guests and it's for employees too. Now, you teased a couple new hotels in the works. Let's end by giving us a glimpse into what's next for the company in terms of openings, deals signed, any particular locations or tidbits you can share for the masses, or you just want to give us a little tantalizing stay tuned.
I'll give you a stay tuned. I will say, we have a couple of brand partners that we've had excellent collaborations with that are not the two big brand partners. And we've come to really value those. And we believe that developers, owners are refreshed by working in more innovative, accommodating service models. And we partner well with those groups. So I think the common thread for us in what's coming up in the future will continue to be independent stuff, but also valuing the great brand partners that we have so that we can collaborate more effectively with a broader cross-section of people.
Okay, so we'll watch this space.
Excellent.
John, that is a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please subscribe to the Hotel News Now podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen, and find all of the latest hotel industry news from around the world at hotelnewsnow.com. See you next time. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode of the Hotel News Now podcast was recorded on March 19, 2025 by me, Stephanie Ricca. The episode was edited by Rachel Daub. Find all hotel industry news at hotelnewsnow.com. Subscribe to this and all Hotel News Now podcasts wherever you like to listen. Just search for Hotel News Now. Thank you.